The speech therapist's shoes clicked against the marble floor of the executive building, and Olivia Kent wondered if this was a mistake. She had dealt with wealthy clients before, but never one who owned half the commercial real estate in the state and ran a manufacturing empire that employed thousands. The assistant who had called her 3 days ago had been vague about the details, mentioning only that Mr. Bennett's nephew needed help and money was no object. Now, standing in the glass elevator that seemed to climb endlessly toward the top floor, Olivia clutched her leather portfolio and reminded herself that a child was a child, regardless of how many zeros were in their guardian's bank account. The doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like something from an architecture magazine. A woman in a crisp suit greeted her with a professional smile and led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Olivia's yearly salary. They stopped at a heavy wooden door and the assistant knocked twice before pushing it open. Grayson Bennett stood with his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear, looking out over the city skyline. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. When he turned, Olivia felt her breath catch for just a moment. He was younger than she had expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair and intense green eyes that seemed to assess her in a single glance. "I will call you back," he said into the phone, then ended the call without waiting for a response. "Miss Kent, thank you for coming on such short notice." His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that gave commands and expected them to be followed. Olivia stepped forward and shook his extended hand, feeling the firm grip and the warmth of his palm against hers. "Of course. Your assistant mentioned your nephew needs speech therapy," Grayson nodded, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "My nephew, Liam. He is 6 years old. He came to live with me 8 months ago after my sister passed away." The pain that flashed across his face was brief but unmistakable. Olivia sat down, her professional instincts taking over. "I am so sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you." "Liam has not spoken since the accident," Grayson continued, sitting on the edge of his desk rather than behind it. "Not a single word. The doctors say there is nothing physically wrong with him, he simply refuses to speak." "Selective mutism," Olivia said gently. "It is not uncommon in children who have experienced trauma. Has he seen a counselor? 3 of them, the best in the state. He sits through the sessions and draws pictures, but he will not talk." Grayson ran a hand through his hair, and for a moment, the powerful CEO looked simply like a man who had no idea how to help a grieving child. "I have read your file. You have experience with cases like this." "I have worked with several children dealing with selective mutism, yes. But I have to be honest with you, Mr. Bennett. There are no guarantees. Progress can be slow and it requires patience and consistency." "I have patience," he said, "and I will give you whatever resources you need. I just want to hear my nephew's voice again." Something in the rawness of his words made Olivia's heart ache. She had expected a cold corporate executive, someone who would treat this like a business transaction. Instead, she saw a man who was desperate to connect with a child he clearly loved. "When can I meet Liam?" Grayson checked his watch. "Now, if you are available, I had my driver bring him to the building. I thought it would be easier than making you go across town to the house." 20 minutes later, Olivia found herself in a conference room that had been hastily converted into something resembling a playroom. Someone had brought in toys, art supplies, and a small table with child-sized chairs. Liam sat at the table, coloring with intense concentration. He was a beautiful child with dark curls and the same green eyes as his uncle. He looked up when they entered, his expression cautious but not fearful. "Liam, this is Miss Kent. She's going to be spending some time with you," Grayson said, his voice softer than it had been in the office. The boy looked at Olivia, then back at his coloring. Grayson squeezed his shoulder gently before leaving the room, though Olivia noticed he only went as far as the glass wall where he could still see them. She sat down across from Liam, not too close, giving him space. Those are beautiful colors you are using. Is that a dragon? Liam nodded, still coloring. Olivia pulled out her own set of markers from her bag. Do you mind if I draw too? I have been wanting to practice my dinosaurs. For the next hour, Olivia simply existed in the same space as Liam. She drew, made comments about her own terrible artistic skills, and occasionally asked yes or no questions that he could answer with nods or shakes of his head. She did not push him to speak, did not make it the focus of their interaction. By the end of the session, Liam had moved slightly closer to her, and he had smiled once when she drew a particularly lopsided T-Rex. When she stepped out of the room, Grayson was waiting. Well, he is a sweet kid. Clearly intelligent, observant. I think we can work together. Olivia paused. But I need to be clear about something. This is not going to be a few weeks of sessions and everything is fixed. It could take months, maybe longer. And I will need you to be involved in the process. Consistency across environments is crucial. Whatever you need. They worked out the details. Olivia would come 3 times a week, both to the office and to Grayson's home. She would provide strategies for him to use with Liam during their daily routines. As they talked, Olivia found herself noticing things about Grayson that had nothing to do with the professional relationship they were establishing. The way he leaned forward when he listened, giving his complete attention, the small scar above his left eyebrow. The fact that despite his obvious wealth and power, he did not talk down to her or treat her expertise as anything less than valuable. Over the following weeks, Olivia became a regular presence in both Grayson's office building and his home. The house was a sprawling estate in the hills outside the city, but Liam's room was warm and lived in, filled with toys and books. Grayson had clearly tried to make it comfortable for the boy. During their sessions, Liam slowly began to open up in nonverbal ways. He would show Olivia his favorite toys, bring her books to read, and even occasionally laugh at her jokes, though still without sound. What surprised Olivia was how often Grayson was present. Despite running a massive corporation, he rearranged his schedule to be home for her evening sessions. He would sit in the corner of the room, watching, learning. Afterward, they would talk about the strategies she was using, and he would take notes like a diligent student. "You are really committed to this," Olivia said one evening after Liam had gone to bed. They were sitting in the kitchen, and Grayson had insisted on making her tea before she left. "He is all I have left of my sister," Grayson said simply. "Sarah was 8 years younger than me. I practically raised her after our parents died. When she had Liam, I was there in the hospital. I have been Uncle Gray since before he could walk." He paused, staring into his own cup. "When she died, I was supposed to just step in and be a father, but I do not know how to do that. I know how to run a company, negotiate deals, read market trends. I do not know how to help a grieving 6-year-old. The vulnerability in his voice made Olivia reach across the table and touch his hand. "You are doing better than you think. Liam is lucky to have you." Grayson looked at her hand on his, then up at her face. Something passed between them in that moment, something electric and unexpected. Olivia pulled her hand back, suddenly aware of how unprofessional she was being. "I should go. Same time on Wednesday." "Yes, and Olivia," she turned back at the door, "thank you for everything." As she drove home that night, Olivia tried to convince herself that the flutter in her chest was nothing, that she was simply invested in her patient's well-being. But she knew she was lying to herself. She had started looking forward to her sessions not just because of the progress Liam was making, but because it meant she would see Grayson. It was a problem. A big problem. She did not date clients or their family members. It was unprofessional and complicated and just generally a terrible idea. So she did what any rational person would do and tried to pretend her feelings did not exist. That strategy lasted about 2 more weeks before everything changed. She arrived for an evening session to find Grayson in the kitchen with Liam, both of them covered in flour. They were attempting to make cookies, and from the look of the disaster around them, it was not going well. "Do not say a word," Grayson said when he saw her, but he was smiling. actually smiling, something she had only seen him do a handful of times. It transformed his face, making him look younger and more approachable. "I was just going to offer to help," Olivia said, setting down her bag, "but if you two have it under control." Liam grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the counter, pointing at the mixing bowl with an expression that clearly said they needed rescue. For the next hour, they worked together to salvage the cookie dough. Olivia showed Liam how to roll the dough into balls, and Grayson managed the oven. It was domestic and sweet, and felt dangerously like something Olivia could get used to. When the cookies were finally baking, Liam ran off to wash the flour out of his hair. Olivia started cleaning up the counter, and Grayson moved to help her. "You did not have to stay and do this," he said. This was not exactly a therapy session. Maybe not traditional therapy, but this is good for him. Doing normal kid things, having fun, it helps build trust and security. She looked up at him. "Besides, I wanted to stay." The words hung in the air between them. Grayson had gone very still, a dish towel in his hands, his eyes locked on hers. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." Her heart was pounding. "Okay. I look forward to your sessions more than I should. I find myself thinking about you at work, wondering what you would think about things. This morning, I was in a meeting about a merger, and all I could think about was that you were coming over tonight." He set down the towel. "That is inappropriate. You are here for Liam, and I should not be saying any of this. But I have never been good at lying, and I cannot keep pretending that this is just professional for me anymore." Olivia knew what she should say. She should tell him that she was Liam's therapist, that any kind of personal relationship would be a conflict of interest, that she needed to maintain boundaries. All of that was true and reasonable and the right thing to do. Instead, she said, "I think about you too, all the time." Grayson closed the distance between them in 2 steps. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "What do we do about this?" "I do not know. I have never been in this situation before." "Neither have I," he admitted. "I have not dated anyone seriously in years. The company takes up all my time, and most people are intimidated by the money, or they only want the money. But you looked at me like I was just a man who needed help with his nephew, and I have not been able to stop thinking about that." Before Olivia could respond, they heard Liam's footsteps on the stairs. They stepped apart, but the air between them remained charged with everything unspoken. The rest of the evening proceeded normally, but Olivia could feel Grayson's eyes on her, and every accidental brush of their hands felt significant. When it was time to leave, Grayson walked her to her car. The night air was cool, and stars were visible despite the city lights in the distance. "We should talk about this," Grayson said. "Really talk about it. Can I take you to dinner? Somewhere away from the house where we can figure out what this is." Olivia knew she should say no. But she had spent so many years being careful and professional, and here was this man who made her feel things she had not felt in a very long time. A man who loved his nephew enough to completely rearrange his life, who listened when she talked, who looked at her like she was the most important person in the room. "Yes, but we need to do this right. I should probably refer Liam to another therapist, at least until we figure out what this is between us." "No," Grayson shook his head firmly. "Liam trusts you. He is making progress. I will not disrupt that, even for this. We will figure something else out." They ended up deciding that Olivia would continue working with Liam, but they would consult with her professional ethics board about the situation. In the meantime, they would keep things separate and appropriate. No dates until they had a plan that did not compromise Liam's care. It sounded reasonable when they discussed it. In practice, it was torture. Every session became an exercise in restraint. Grayson would come home from work, loosen his tie, and watch Olivia work with Liam with an intensity that made her skin warm. They would talk afterward, carefully keeping a proper distance, but the attraction between them was obvious. Liam, meanwhile, was making remarkable progress. He started using a communication board that Olivia had introduced, pointing to pictures to express his needs and wants. He was more animated, more engaged. One day, during a session in the backyard, he laughed out loud at something silly Olivia did. The sound was bright and pure, and both she and Grayson froze, afraid to acknowledge it and make it disappear. "Did you hear that?" Grayson whispered. "I heard it," Olivia confirmed, tears stinging her eyes. It was not speech, not yet, but it was vocalization. It was progress. That night, after Liam was in bed, Grayson poured them both wine and they sat on the back patio. "I spoke to your ethics board's representative today," Grayson said. "She said that if I am not paying you directly for services to Liam, and if we document everything properly, there is no violation. The company is paying you, not me personally. That seems like a technicality. Maybe, but it is enough." He turned to look at her. "Olivia, I have been patient. I have been respectful, but I really want to take you to dinner. I want to know everything about you. I want to stop pretending that this is just professional." "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, nowhere near the places Grayson usually frequented for business. He picked her up himself, driving a car that was nice but not ostentatious, and he held the door open for her like a gentleman from another era. Over pasta and wine they talked, really talked. Olivia told him about growing up in a small town, about her decision to become a speech therapist after her younger brother had struggled with a stutter. Grayson told her about building his company from the ground up after inheriting a small manufacturing business from his father, about the pressure and the loneliness that came with success. "Everyone wants something," he said. "A favor, a deal, access to my contacts. You are the first person in years who has looked at me and seen just me." "That is not true," Olivia said gently. "Liam sees you. He sees his Uncle Gray who makes terrible cookies and reads him stories at night." Grayson reached across the table and took her hand. "I have spent the last 8 months feeling like I am failing at the most important thing I have ever done. Then you walked into my office and suddenly I had hope. Not just for Liam, but for myself too. You are not failing, you are learning, and that is different. Thanks to you." They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking, and laughing. When Grayson drove her home, he walked her to her door. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw. "I would like to kiss you," he said, "but I want to make sure that is okay." In answer, Olivia rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but then Grayson's arms came around her and pulled her closer. He kissed her like she was precious, like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was worth waiting for," Grayson murmured against her hair. They started dating properly after that, though they were careful to keep it separate from her work with Liam. During sessions, they were professional. But after Liam was in bed, or on the weekends when the boy was at playdates, they would steal time together. Grayson took her to the theater, to art galleries, on long drives into the countryside. He was attentive and thoughtful, remembering small details she mentioned and surprising her with little gifts. What struck Olivia most was how different he was from the powerful CEO everyone else saw. With her, he was softer, more open. He told her about his fears for Liam, his grief for his sister, his worry that he was not enough. She fell in love with him slowly and then all at once, and it terrified her because she had never felt this way before. 3 months into their relationship, something remarkable happened. Olivia was in the middle of a session with Liam, working on sound games, when he suddenly said, "Ball." It was one word, quiet and uncertain, but it was speech. Olivia went very still. "Can you say that again, sweetheart?" Ball, louder this time, more confident. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she pulled Liam into a hug. "You did it. You used your voice." Grayson had been in his home office but came running when he heard the commotion. When Olivia told him what happened, he dropped to his knees in front of Liam. "Can you say it for me, buddy?" "Can you say ball?" "Ball," Liam said, and then, softly, "Uncle Gray." Grayson made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled Liam into his arms and held him tight, and Olivia had to turn away to give them their moment. She walked out to the hallway, overwhelmed with emotion. Grayson found her there a few minutes later. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Thank you for giving him back his voice. He did the work, I just helped guide him. No, you did more than that, you gave us both hope. After that breakthrough, Liam's progress accelerated. He started using words regularly, though he was still quiet and thoughtful in his speech. Olivia began to transition him to a colleague for ongoing therapy, knowing that her relationship with Grayson had become serious enough that continuing as Liam's therapist was no longer appropriate. The transition was bittersweet. Olivia had grown to love the little boy, and she worried about how he would handle the change. But Liam surprised them all by adapting well to his new therapist, especially when Olivia promised she would still visit regularly. "Why do you come over if you are not my teacher anymore?" Liam asked one evening when Olivia joined them for dinner. Grayson and Olivia exchanged glances. They had not talked to Liam about their relationship yet, wanting to wait until they were sure it was serious and stable, but it was clearly time. "Because I care about you very much," Olivia said carefully, "and I care about your Uncle Gray too. Do you love him?" Liam asked with the blunt honesty of children. Grayson had frozen with his fork halfway to his mouth. Olivia felt her cheeks warm, but she refused to lie. "Yes, I do." "Good," Liam said, going back to his food. "He loves you too, he told Aunt Maria on the phone." Grayson groaned and put his face in his hands. "My housekeeper has a big mouth." "You told Maria you love me?" Olivia asked, her heart pounding. "I tell everyone I love you." "I told my executive board during a meeting last week. I told the guy at the coffee shop I would take out a billboard if I thought it would not embarrass you." He looked at her with those intense green eyes. "I love you, Olivia. I have loved you for months. I was just waiting for the right moment to say it." "This seems like the right moment," she whispered. "I love you too." After that, their relationship moved from tentative to solid. Olivia started spending more nights at the house, becoming a natural part of Liam's routine. She would read him stories before bed, help him with his speech exercises, and tuck him in alongside Grayson. It felt like a family, and Olivia had not realized how much she wanted that until she had it. 6 months after Liam's breakthrough, Grayson took Olivia to the beach house he owned but rarely used. It was a beautiful place, all windows and light, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. They spent the weekend walking on the beach, cooking meals together and talking about the future. On their last evening, as they watched the sunset from the deck, Grayson turned to her. "I need to tell you something, and I am going to mess it up because I am better with numbers than words. But you have taught me that the important things need to be said, even when they are hard." He took her hands in his. "Before you came into my life, I thought I had everything figured out. I had my company, my plans, my carefully controlled existence. Then my sister died, and I inherited a grieving child, and suddenly nothing made sense anymore. I was drowning, and I did not know how to ask for help. Grayson, let me finish. You walked into my office, and you were not intimidated by me or the money or any of it. You saw Liam, and you saw me, and you treated us both like we mattered. You gave Liam his voice back. But more than that, you made me want to find words to express what I feel. You made me want to be better, to be the kind of man who deserves you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. You have become the best part of my day every day. Liam asks for you when you are not there. The house feels empty without you. My whole life feels empty without you." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Marry me, Olivia, be my wife, be Liam's mother, build a life with us." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. When they finally pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. "I have to call Liam," Grayson said. "He helped pick out the ring. He is going to want to know if you said yes." They called from the deck, and Liam's excited chatter filled the air. He wanted to know when Olivia would move in permanently, if she would still read him stories, if this meant he could call her mom. Grayson looked at Olivia when Liam asked that last question, and she nodded through her tears. "Whenever you are ready, buddy. Whenever it feels right to you." The wedding was 6 months later, a small ceremony in the garden of Grayson's estate. Liam was the ring bearer, proud and serious in his little suit. He had been practicing his speech with his new therapist, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, Liam shouted no. With such force that everyone laughed during their vows, Grayson held Olivia's hands and spoke clearly and firmly. "I promise to love you every day in every way I know how. I promise to tell you how I feel, even when the words are hard to find. I promise to build a life with you that is full of laughter and love and all the things we have dreamed about." Olivia's voice shook when it was her turn. "I promise to stand beside you, to support you, to love you and Liam with everything I have. I promise to help you find the words when you need them and to listen when you do. I promise to make this house a home, full of warmth and joy." When they kissed as husband and wife, Liam cheered and so did all their guests. The reception was beautiful, full of dancing and good food and toasts that made them laugh and cry. But Olivia's favorite moment came later, when she and Grayson snuck away for a quiet moment in his study. He pulled her into his arms and just held her, swaying slightly to the music that drifted in from the party. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "I have never been happier in my entire life." "Good. Because I plan to spend the rest of our lives making sure you stay that way." They moved back to the party, to Liam and their friends and their new life together. Later, when the guests had gone home and Liam was asleep, Olivia and Grayson walked through their house, turning off lights and picking up stray glasses. "Mrs. Bennett," Grayson said, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I spent so many years thinking I did not need anyone. Then Liam came into my life and I realized I needed to be needed. But with you, it is different. I do not need you because I am incomplete without you. I need you because you make everything better. You make me better." "You make me better too," Olivia whispered. "You and Liam both." They stood there in the quiet house, holding each other, both of them thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. A grieving man and a traumatized child and a speech therapist who had walked into their lives and changed everything. 2 years later, Olivia sat in the nursery of their home, holding their newborn daughter while Liam read her a story in his clear, confident voice. Grayson stood in the doorway, watching his family with an expression of pure contentment. "Uncle Gray, I mean Dad," Liam corrected himself. He had started calling Grayson Dad about a year ago after the adoption papers were finalized. "When is Emma going to be able to talk?" "Not for a while yet, buddy. But when she does, you can help teach her, just like Olivia taught you." "Mom taught me," Liam said firmly. He had started calling Olivia Mom right after the wedding and had never looked back. Grayson met Olivia's eyes over their son's head, and the love that passed between them was tangible. They had built something beautiful from grief and uncertainty. They had found each other when neither of them was looking, and they had created a family that was strong and loving and real. That night, after both children were asleep, Grayson and Olivia sat on their back patio under the stars. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Grayson asked. "I was so desperate to help Liam. I thought hiring the best speech therapist would fix everything. I remember thinking you were intimidating and probably impossible to work with," he laughed. "I was impossible to work with, but you did not care. You just saw a kid who needed help and a man who was in over his head. I saw more than that. I saw someone who loved deeply, even if he did not know how to show it yet. You taught me how to show it. You taught me that love is something you express, not just feel, that the words matter even when they are hard to say." He turned to face her fully. "I love you, Olivia. I love the life we have built. I love watching you with our kids. I love that you still laugh at my terrible jokes and that you make fun of my cooking. Someone has to keep you humble. You do more than that. You make me whole." They sat there for a long time, talking about their days, their dreams, their plans for the future. Inside the house, their children slept safely. Around them, their garden bloomed. Above them, stars scattered across the sky. Olivia thought about the chain of events that had led her here. A phone call about a child who would not speak, a desperate CEO who did not know how to help, a series of therapy sessions that had become so much more. She had walked into Grayson's office expecting a job, and she had found her entire life instead. "What are you thinking about?" Grayson asked. "I am thinking about how lucky I am, how lucky we all are. Luck had nothing to do with it. You walked into my life and refused to leave until you had fixed everything." "I did not fix anything. I just helped you find your voice, both of you. And in the process, you became my voice. The words I could not find, the feelings I could not express. You saw through all my walls and loved me anyway." "That was the easy part," Olivia said softly. "Loving you has always been easy." They went inside eventually, checking on Liam one last time before heading to their own room. As Olivia got ready for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked happy, truly happy, in a way she had never been before. Grayson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you smiling about?" "Just thinking about how different my life is now. 2 years ago, I was alone in my apartment, eating takeout and watching bad television. Now I have you and Liam and Emma. I have a family. We have a family," he corrected. "And I am never letting it go. I am never letting you go." "Good. Because I am not going anywhere." They climbed into bed, and Grayson pulled her close. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Down the hall, their children dreamed peacefully. And in this room, two people who had found each other against all odds held tight to the love they had built together. Olivia fell asleep thinking about first meetings and second chances, about the unexpected ways life could change. She had gone to help a child find his voice, and in the process, she had found her home, her heart, her future. She had fallen in love with a man who ran an empire but melted for his family, who had learned to express his feelings because she had shown him it was safe to do so. And Grayson, lying awake a while longer, thought about the day a speech therapist had walked into his office and changed everything. He had hired her to help his nephew, never imagining she would become his wife, the mother of his children, the center of his entire world. She had taught him that having everything meant nothing without someone to share it with. She had made him want to find words to express his love, and then she had given him a lifetime to do exactly that. In the morning, they would wake up to the sound of Liam playing with his sister. They would make breakfast together, all of them laughing and talking over each other. They would plan their day, their week, their life. They would continue building the future they had dreamed about on that deck overlooking the ocean. But for now, they slept peacefully. Two people who had found exactly what they needed in each other, wrapped in the security of a love that had started with a child's silence and grown into something beautiful, something lasting, something real. They had found their happily ever after, and they were never letting go.